Yesterday in history. We're live?
No, not yet.
Okay, how is everybody? Welcome to the live stream on this very rainy and humid day here in South Korea. My hair is poofing up everywhere. Well, what hair I have left is poofing up everywhere because of the weather. We're glad you could be with us today. Hello to Alyssa Marie, Lolly, Pedro Vigara, Justina Tenorio, and everyone else who is watching the live stream today. Those are just the first few that whose names I saw here on StreamYard. So I'm Don, and today I've got a few segments for you. I've got a segment on this day in history, May 16th. Got a segment on news of the world, and I have a segment on slang phrases in English. And we do have a fourth segment on your questions and comments. So if you have questions or comments, please share them with us, and I'll address them in the last segment of today. A few more people are saying hello. We got Nabil, Mohammed Lakhdari. That's great. Many different people from all around the world. I always like to see that. It's wonderful. Okay, so how is everybody today? I hope you're all doing well. Here's our, go ahead and throw up the first segment here. May 16th, 1919. So over 100 years ago, so 102 years ago today, there was the first transatlantic flight, Now that means, transatlantic flight means across the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is what we call the ocean that lies between Europe and Africa on one side and North America and South America on the other. The Atlantic Ocean is between them. And on May 16th, 1919, there was the first flight that was across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it wasn't only in one stop. It took many stops. This is very, very early airplane technology. So they were using what was called a hydroplane. They still have these, hydroplane. And that means a plane. Hydro means water or related to water. So a hydroplane is a plane that can take off and land on the water. And so they were flying this hydroplane across the Atlantic Ocean. And it was a U.S. Navy officer named Albert Cushing Reed and a crew of 5 people. It took them 23 days to reach their final destination, which was in England. And they made several stops along the way. They made, I think, 6 stops before they made it to their final destination. So they're flying for a while and then landing. But 23 days, you could do that transatlantic flight now in 6 hours, of course, because planes are much faster, can fly much higher. And in fact, when Reed returned to the United States, he predicted that someday planes would fly as much as 60,000 feet in the air, and that they would go 1,000 miles an hour or faster. Both of which predictions came to be true. But at the time, people were thinking, I don't think that's even possible. A plane can't go that far in the air. It can't go that fast. That will never happen. But he was predicting that it would, and in fact, it did. So his prediction was correct there. So Lieutenant Commander Albert Cushing Reed later became a rear admiral for the U.S. Navy. So in his later life, he was a rear admiral. So at the time, he was a lieutenant commander, which is a medium level officer, I suppose, in the Navy. And he became a real admiral, and he became an aviator trainer, meaning he trained pilots. He trained other flyers for the U.S. Navy. So that's what his career was. So he was a pilot himself, and then later trained pilots. And that first transatlantic flight happened on this day in 1919. All right. So let's take a look at our second segment. Our second segment is about news of the world. And I'm looking at a story from the Japan Times about the NBA Hall of Fame inductees. And the title of the article is Lakers Legend Kobe Bryant enshrined in Basketball Hall of Fame. And it says here that this is from Reuters news agency. Los Angeles Lakers legend Kobe Bryant was inducted posthumously to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame on Saturday, that's yesterday for me, as the class of 2020 was enshrined after months of delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so this was a major event. So there were new inductees into the Hall of Fame. It was kind of a bittersweet. Kobe Bryant was one of 4 people inducted. It was kind of a bittersweet ceremony because Kobe Bryant died last year at the age of 41 in a helicopter crash. So first, let's look at some of the language that we can learn from this story. So to be inducted, to be an inductee. So first, that verb induct means to formally accept someone into a position or an organization. And in this case, the organization is the Hall of Fame for the most accomplished players in the National Basketball Association. And the noun inductee, it means a person who has been inducted into some position or organization. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that word inductee in a minute. But let's look at some example uses of induct. So here's an example use. Tomorrow, the university will induct 3 new members into its board of directors. That means they will formally introduce them or make them part of the board of directors for the university. And another example use of this verb is some tribal groups have strict requirements before a boy is inducted into manhood. So before a boy is accepted formally as an adult, a man, he has to go through some very strict requirements. Another word that we can learn from the story was they used the word posthumously. So that's how these words are pronounced, posthumous and posthumously. The word posthumous means after death. That P-O-S-T, post prefix, means after. And humus means ground. So it means literally after being put in the ground, so after death. And posthumously is the adverb, meaning an action that takes place after death. So in this story, Kobe Bryant was posthumously inducted into the Hall of Fame. He received the honor after his death. And in the story, it says that Bryant's widow, Vanessa, who started dating Kobe when she was very young, 17, she offered an acceptance on his behalf as the presenter, Michael Jordan, stood nearby. So a widow is a woman who survives the death of her husband. So a husband who survives the death of his wife would be called a widower. So, but in the story, Vanessa Bryant, she's Kobe Bryant's widow. She was his wife until his death last year. So for, I think, about 20 some years, they were married until he died just last year. The story also calls them honorees. An honoree is a person who receives an honor. Note that there's this double E ending, similar to what we saw in the word inductee. So let me talk about that now. So that double E ending is added to some verbs to make them nouns, indicating a person who is the beneficiary of the act indicated by the verb. So a person honored is an honoree. A person inducted is an inductee. And the same way you could, there are other examples. A person who is addressed by a letter would be the addressee. And a person who is absent from class is an absentee. A person who is employed is an employee. So you can see that these double E endings appear in many different words. If you see that double E ending, you know that it might be a case where it's one of these words, a noun created from a verb using the double E ending. Be careful, though, not all verbs work this way. You can't turn be, you can't just make a double E ending and have it mean a person who was being. It doesn't work that way. It only works with some verbs, but it can be useful when you're spotting those double E words to know that it comes from a verb. To go back to the story for just a second, other players who were inducted into the Hall of Fame yesterday include Tim Duncan, who I saw play when he was in college. I saw him play as a collegiate basketball player at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. So I saw his whole career. So that tells you a bit about how old I am. But also, it was kind of interesting to see the capstone to his career, meaning the final achievement of his career. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Okay, so let's take a look at our next segment. Our next segment, third segment on slang phrases. I've got 3 phrases. Let's take a look at those. So the first one is got it or got this. And this is a phrase which can be used in 2 main ways. First, it can be used as a way of asking if someone understands or to confirm that you understand. So here's an example use. So someone might say to you, hey, just meet us at the subway station. Got it? And then you could say, okay, got it. So they're asking, do you understand? And you're saying, yes, I do. Right? And that's kind of a slang way of saying that, both asking and confirming. So that's one way. Do you understand that this phrase is used? But there's a second way this phrase is used. And that second way is to say that something is under your control or it's in your power or that you will accomplish it. So an example for this would be someone could say, we need help. And you would say, don't worry, I got this. And that means it's in your control. You will give them help. You will accomplish what needs to be done. Or someone could say to encourage another person, you can do it. You got this. And you got this means you can accomplish this. You can make it happen. It's under your control. Got it? Okay, so that's our first one. And our second example phrase is by the way. By the way, this is a phrase used to indicate that there's something additional to talk about. It means that you're changing the expected flow, the way of the conversation, into a different channel. You're going by the way. So a word with similar meaning would be the word incidentally. But by the way is a little bit more informal way of saying that. And you could use this phrase when you want to introduce a topic which is not directly connected with what you were just talking about. So let's look at some example uses. So at the end of a meeting, someone might say, well, that's it for the meeting. But by the way, is anyone going out for lunch later? So they're completing the meeting. That's the end of that topic. But then they're saying, oh, but wait, by the way, maybe they want to join someone for lunch or they're curious about where people are going. By the way, is anyone going anywhere for lunch? And another example use, someone might say at the end of a first meeting, it's nice to meet you. And by the way, that's a nice hat you've got. So they're just in concluding the meeting, but also adding a compliment at the end. Oh, that's a very nice hat. Okay. And that's how you can use this phrase, by the way. And our third phrase is about L's, all about L's, to take an L or post an L like this. So the letter L, when used in this case, these are all variations on the basic theme, which is that letter L, in this case, stands for loss, which means a failure to accomplish something. So someone who is talking about their L's or posting their L's, that means they're talking about their failures or admitting their failures or losses. So to take an L means to take an unfortunate loss or an unfortunate failure, while to post an L means to record a failure. And sometimes, especially on the internet, this idea of posting an L, it's something where the person doing it is not aware. They're doing it unintentionally. They think they're revealing something interesting or fun or good, but it's not successful. Their post was a failure in some way. So let's look at some examples. One example is you could say, well, that's an L. And that's a common way of identifying that I'm sorry, not common, but that's a way of identifying that something is a failure or it's a loss or it's bad. And this is more commonly seen in text than in spoken. So someone posts something and a response might be, well, that's an L, meaning no, that was bad. That was a bad post. Didn't work out. And another example use, this is for spoken use. Someone might say, hey, how was the exam? And you might say, well, I took an L, meaning how bad, it was bad. How bad was it? It was bad. I didn't do well on the exam. I took an L. I took a loss. And then here's another example use. Every single comment on that video was somebody posting an L. And that means that all the commenters were stupid. All the commenters were revealing their own stupidity by their comments. And I think we've all had this experience where we click on a video and all the comments were, I can't believe all these people are saying these things. This is ridiculous. These people are all idiots. They're all posting L's, you might say. Okay, so that's how you use that phrase. Okay, so that's it for our segment on slang phrases. I hope you got them all. And let's take a look now at our fourth segment, which is about addressing questions and comments from viewers. Let's take a look at some of those now. So let's look at some of them here. So what are some different ones? So some people were mentioning, oh, a trainee, someone who is in training or has been trained is a trainee. That's another double E word. Yes. A referee, someone who is a reference or is refereeing. Yeah, so referee, that's probably an example of a double E word. Okay. And then Justina's saying, I'm getting it. Thank you for the explanation. All right, that's very good. So still or always. What is the difference between still and always? Still has the idea that something happened or was in place and it remains that way. So are you still living in the same house? Yes, I'm still living there. So that's still. Always means it happens all the time, all the cases. You wouldn't say, I'm always living there, but you could say maybe I've always been there or I've always lived there, in which case it means not just still, but at all times. At all times I've lived there. I've only lived in one house, so I've always lived there. So that's the difference between still. Still means that something continues. Always means in all cases it's true, right? So you could say, this isn't strictly true, but you could say, the moon always orbits the earth. It happens all the time. I'm still sick. I'm not always sick, but I'm still sick, meaning I was sick last week and I still feel badly. So that's a difference. So the moon going around the earth, that's something that always happens. Me being sick, that's not something that always happens. I hope that's not something that always happens. Okay, so that's how those work. How about the phrase? Oh, how do you pronounce the word taxi and tax? Well, that's how you do it. Taxi. So taxi, you've got to stress there on the first syllable. Taxi, and then tax, same thing. So it's pronounced almost the same word as the word tax, T-A-C-K-S, meaning those little metal pins with a sharp point on them. So that would be attack. But tax Yeah, tax and taxi. That's how you pronounce those words. Okay, let's see what other questions that we might have here. We've got some different ones from different people. So the word idea is an example of a countable abstract noun. Should we use an indefinite article, and before it? An idea, absolutely, you can say that. I have an idea. You wouldn't say I have the idea. That would be a special case. I have the idea that will solve all our problems. In that case, you could use the. But otherwise, yeah, an indefinite article is appropriate. Do you have an idea? Yes, I do. I have a good idea. So that's right. You will use the indefinite article with idea. Yeah, and countable abstract. That's a good one. Meaning a noun that doesn't have a concrete thing. An idea is not something you can touch, but it is a thing. And it is countable. One idea, two ideas, three ideas, all that works too. So that's what his question means. Somebody was asking, how about the phrase anyway? Well, what exactly is the question with this word? How about the phrase anyway? So anyway, it is a way of changing the topic. I think this is building on the idea of by the way. Anyway is another way of shifting the topic. Yes. But anyway, by the way this is just something more. Anyway, there's a kind of dismissal of the topic that just happened. So the way people often use this in ordinary conversation now is somebody will say something. Let's say somebody says something that's really silly. They make a bad joke. Someone might go, anyway, as a way of saying, leave that aside. Let's change to another topic because that joke was awful or something like that. So anyway is a way of shifting the topic, similar to by the way. But with anyway, there's a sense of dismissal or moving on from the previous topic. So there's a sense of saying, well, nonetheless, or regardless of that, or forgetting about that, anyway, let's move on. But you can also use anyway, not at the beginning of the sentence, but in other parts of the sentence. Let me give you another example. My teacher told us that we needed to study for the test, but instead of studying, I stayed up late at night, not studying anyway. Meaning, regardless of my teacher's advice, I stayed up late, not studying. So yeah, you can use anyway in that way too. In this case, it's not changing the topic. It's just saying that regardless of that, regardless of what came previously, I did this thing. Okay, so that's anyway. Let's see. What are some other, any other questions? So here is one from Alyssa Marie. Why I won't probably work later. Why is that grammatically incorrect? I won't probably work later. Why is it incorrect? Okay. There's a very complicated explanation for that, which I don't have all the details to explain on the fly like this. But I will say this, usually an adverb like this should go before the verb it modifies. I probably will not work later. So I probably won't work later. And the reason has to do with these sort of frequency adverbs like probably and such. But yeah, you want your adverbs to go before the verbs like this. So I probably won't. I probably will come there. Let me see if I can think of some more examples. I usually work later. So again, it's going to come before. That doesn't mean that it always is true. But for this word, probably, you're going to usually want to have that come before the verb. It modifies. I probably won't work right there. Yeah. So I could also say that will not work is the verb, because it's not I will not, but I will not work, won't work. And so you want to keep that together. Usually you want to keep the verb together as a unit. It's not always true. That doesn't necessarily work. And there's a case where I've broken up the verb, doesn't work, with necessarily in between. So it doesn't necessarily work all the time, but usually it's the case. All right, so let's look at, but Alyssa Marie has another question about how to use the phrases so to speak and as you will. Okay, so to speak is a phrase that you use when you're saying something that you may or may not agree with, or you may or may not, it may not be specifically correct, or that you're being figurative, meaning you're not being literal. So you could say, here's an example of figurative language. You might say, he doesn't have a leg to stand on, so to speak. That indicates that you're not meaning that he literally lacks a leg. You're just saying that you're using the figure of speech, where have a leg to stand on means there's no support for your idea. So to speak introduces the idea of a figurative expression, not a literal expression. So that's so to speak. Now, as you will. As you will is it has a somewhat different. This can also means actually. There's another way of saying this. You could also say, if you will. So, if you will, when you say it as if you will, it's similar in meaning to so to speak. So, he doesn't have a leg to stand on, if you will, is another way of saying, well, I'm being figurative. I'm not being literal. But the expression as you will is the idea of as you like it, whatever you like, what you will. All right. So, but I think Alyssa Marie probably meant so to speak and if you will, where if you will is it's similar to so to speak. In that it's introducing an idea that may not be literally true, but it is figuratively true. There's another meaning of if you will that's a little different from so to speak, where maybe you're using an expression that might not be correct, or might not be what people usually say. You're in this case, you're asking your listener to forgive you for using something that may not be correct or appropriate, but you're using it in a way that it works for you. And so you're saying, well, basically it's short for saying, if you will grant me the privilege of saying it this way. So that's probably the difference between if you will and so to speak. All right. So what's the difference between absolutely and definitely? There isn't a strict, there's overlap between those in common use, meaning that people will sometimes use them interchangeably in some contexts, meaning it's a way of saying it's definitely true. Okay, so somebody say, oh, will you be there? Absolutely. Definitely. Okay, so you could say either one as a way of saying that's going to be true. The difference is definitely means that it's certain. it's certain. Like, for example, does the verb fall mean go down? Definitely. That is true. It means to go down, to fall down. So definitely. Absolutely means that something is completely true. So if I said, does the word fall mean to go down? That's definitely true, but it's not absolutely true. Why? It's definitely true because that is right. That is what it means, but it's not absolutely true because fall also is a noun meaning the season of autumn. So it's not completely true. It's just true. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference between something that is right, but it's not completely right. Okay. So the word fall, fall has several meanings. Okay. So you could be definitely true about one meaning of it, but not absolutely true because it has other meanings. So that's the big difference between absolutely versus definitely. Definitely is confirming that something is true, and absolutely means it's completely that way. Did everyone get out of the building in time before it fell down? Absolutely. In that case, you would say absolutely because it means, yes, completely. All the people got out. Okay. You could say definitely, but that wouldn't strictly be correct because what you're trying to confirm is that something is completely the case. So that's the difference there. At my best and at my worst. So someone's asking, what do these two sentences mean? At my best and at my worst. So, so sometimes there's an expression where if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. These two sentences are getting at the idea that we aren't the same at all times. Like like some days are better than others, right? Some days we're like our brains or our bodies or our behavior is functioning at the best it ever does. And we would say, then you're at your best. I'm at my best, meaning my brain is functioning at its best, or my body is performing perfectly, or I'm morally at my best. I'm doing something very well. I'm really doing well today. And then some days, maybe you are a little tired, or you're a little hungry, or you're in a bad mood for whatever reasons, but you're at your worst. Your brain is functioning at its lowest possible, or you're physically feeling well because you're sick or whatever. There's many different reasons. Or you're behaving badly, not like you usually do. You would even say, yeah, I can't believe I did that. I was at my worst. So that's the idea. It's the bottom level for your normal performance and the top level for your normal performance. So that's the difference between at my best and at my worst. And so if you're asking this question because of the expression, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. That's what it comes from. It comes from the idea that all human beings are really kind of a range of possible behaviors. We're not the same on every day of our lives. Sometimes we're at our best. Sometimes we're at our worst. And sometimes we're somewhere in between. Usually we're somewhere in between. So that's what those two phrases mean. So let's look through and see if we have some more examples. Other questions. At my best, at my worst. We did that one. That's pretty good. Most YouTube challenges are posting L's. Very good. So that's very good. Yes, a lot of people who do the YouTube challenges, those are posting out. That's a perfect use of that slang term. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to scroll back and look at some other questions and comments. That's a good one. Hello, thank you for your kindness from New York, from Maki Love. Thank you very much to you. Good morning from Katongole Suleiman, I think is how that is. Etiquette is like, were you on it? Something about posting L's, probably. No, I was not. I was not posting L's. Somebody's asking if I'm British. I'm certainly not British. I'm an American. But I mean, for non-native speakers don't always pick up on accents. So I shouldn't act, I'm not acting like it should be obvious to you. It shouldn't be necessarily obvious to you. I'm just saying, no, I'm from the United States. Muhammad Ali says, I'm from Pakistan. Tell us more about your academic career. Well, if you go back and listen to the first live stream, you'll hear about my academic career there. I'll just briefly say that I'm a PhD in English, but I'll give you more details on some of the other live streams. Go back and listen to them. You'll hear all about it. Let's see. It's a shameless plug for for our other live streams. We got a hi from the Philippines and from Algeria. Nabila Abaidia saying, hello, I'm here. That's great. Okay, let me see. Are there any other questions and comments that I need to address? L'enfant de Tiahui. Did I pronounce that right? That looks French to me. So I'm assuming that's kind of French. Cyril Daihan Ulai. That's my best attempt at pronouncing that. A shout out to Justina Tenorio. She wants a shout out, so I'm giving her one. A shout out means to mention someone. She says, that's my favorite channel and I learn a lot from you. Thank you very much. It's good to hear from you. I hope you do continue to learn a lot from us. That's great. Alyssa Marie asks, is this correct? You put a lot of spaces in between the words. So if you're asking if that sentence is correct, it looks correct to me. You put a lot of spaces in between the words. You put a lot of space. I don't think the word in is necessary there. I think you could actually omit in, because between sort of implies that it's in between them. But as it is, it's not incorrect. So yeah, you could say, is this correct? You put a lot of spaces in between the words, or you put a lot of spaces between the words. Bashir from Iraq says hello. So I lived for about 1.5 years in Iraq. So hello to you as well. So I was up near the Turkish border with Turkey when I was in Iraq. That was a few years ago. All right. So good to hear from you. All right. Let me see. Any other questions and comments? Might be time, if we don't have more questions and comments, to start to wrap up today's live stream. So that's very good to hear from all of you today. It was good to be with you. I hope you learned a little bit of English and had a little bit of fun as well. What? Can you tell them that next week we'll post with subtitles? Okay, so next week we're going to post, I'm getting information from our own Danny that says that that some of the videos next week will have subtitles. So if you want to check out some excerpts from this live stream or from other live streams, you can watch it and there will be English subtitles hard-coded in so you can see what was being said. You can actually read it so that if you have difficulty with listening, you'll be able to go back and maybe misunderstood what I said or you weren't sure what I said. You can just read the text. And sometimes that's a little easier. I find that reading knowledge of a language comes a little bit faster than listening knowledge. All right, see you next time.